This week's channeled message from Hecate came banging on my metaphorical door, demanding inside my head for me to hurry up and channel so that I could get this message out. And it's cool and it's interesting that it was so strong a message, but the content of it leaves a little bit to be desired in the hopeful and happy department, so apologies in advance. This week's message is a little dark. Here it is. Blood has a karmic cost. The more we spill, the less we have to barter with later, because blood is life force, and spilling it is always a gift, a sacrifice to someone or something. Most spirits will accept your effort or energy put towards their various ends, but there are some spirits who desire only to be paid in blood, and be wary of those spirits which prefer blood, because blood is future potential, and spilling it is a waste of this potential. You'll owe a debt energetically for any blood that you spill, and particularly for the blood of other humans. This sacrifice is a summoning of energy, enough to reshape the world, though its practitioners and participants don't realize that that's what they're doing. The military-industrial complex, which generates all of our bloodshed that we're talking about, is a dark god who prefers blood and blood money, which is rising into its full power and seeks the dominion of, eventually, space. And this will not be allowed. The military-industrial complex has been sort of in hiding. It's been undercover because it was growing and developing still, but it's matured now, and we're witnessing its coming of age. These self-righteous, violent urges that everyone is expressing right now across the world is really its influence energetically. Propaganda is just one of its tools. Fear, division, uncertainty, greed, etc. These are all aspects, including the entertainment that we consume, especially even with its obsession with violence and false heroes. There's no stopping it. It has to gorge itself in violent decadence for a long time still, until it finally consumes itself to death. And this happens while the new reality is being built. The future system works better as like feudal city-states than the global infrastructure that we have now, and it takes a really long time for us to transition from the old to the new. There's a period of interregnum, a space between empires. And life can flourish in these spaces in between, but the most clever life flourishes the most. It's not a fair time, but a time of competition and of unbalanced and fast growth. Basically, we're in the middle of a forest fire, and the time that comes after it will favor opportunistic growth, so we should prepare ourselves now. This is a time for conserving our energy, huddling for safety in the middle of a conflagration, so that after the storm, we can expect to take advantage of the new landscape. Focus on survival for yourself, for your family, and for your neighbors, and pray for everyone else. This gets pretty desperate in 2024, and allegiances will matter, which is partially why we're purging and distancing ourselves from our various old networks, connections, social circles, and so on during this lunar nodal transit. It's just all part of it working together. And since what lies ahead is a little rough, we're going to need to be able to rely on our communities, our neighbors, and the people around us. So where it may not have mattered so much who was standing next to you in civilized society, as we move a little further away from that during this conflict-oriented time ahead, who you have sitting next to you physically is going to matter. So it's time to think local and work locally and pray globally. All right, that's the message for this week. Now I'm going to do a few readings to help us make sense of that message and figure out how to apply it in our lives. All right, so since that message was a little scary, a little dark, maybe a little depressing, let's try to stay focused on the future rather than the rough patch that's immediately ahead of us. So the question I want to ask is, how do we continue to work on our dreams during unpredictable and financially difficult times without getting distracted? How do we stay focused on the future, right? So with this one, right away, we've got the Eight of Wands, which I think is the card of regulation according to the Bindov Tarot de Marseille deck. card of regulation. So definitely like red tape and things having to be a certain way because of the presiding order. And then right in the middle, we have the battleur, or the magician. The magician, particularly in this deck, but kind of in general, means less somebody who is practicing magic, not necessarily always that. It's also maybe just somebody who's being very clever, who's using all of the tools at their disposal. A bit of a trickster energy as well. This is like somebody who's playing shell games. And then we have the King of Cups. The King of Cups and the Magician aren't making eye contact here, so that's interesting. But the only real face card, even though this card has a face, this is one of the major arcana, so the face cards, the court cards, are in the minor arcana only. And so you've got, I would assume, ourselves displayed here as the King of Cups, knowing what we want, our heart's in the right place, we have control over our emotions, we direct the flow of our universe to what degree we can. We do so from a point of stability and control. But this requires cleverness. So I think the king is opposing the Eight of Wands. So the work to be done is mired in not exactly difficulty, but just sort of challenging circumstances that don't allow you to move forward easily. Let's put it that way. And you're sort of wistfully looking off into the future, off to the right here, so you've got the work to be done and the mess that it is, and then kind of looking off into the distance. And right in the middle of that, the centerpiece is this clever trickster magician energy. And maybe it is magic right here in the middle. Maybe by relying on that side of ourselves, that wily, creative, willing to do anything, summon a demon to get what we need. It's that kind of energy that allows us to continue to work on our dreams during unpredictable and financially difficult times. There you go. Do magic. Be the trickster. All right. For the next question, I think we should focus on the other practical matter, the sort of how to keep yourself safe, and safety having to do with what you immediately surround yourself with and who you invest your energy into so that they help protect you. So simply put, how do we know who to build community with? How do we know who's going to be the right people to surround ourselves with? How do we know who to build community with? Four of Swords reversed. The Ace of Wands reversed. The Nine of Swords. Yikes. The Sun and the Two of Cups. How do we know who to build community with? Well, this is starts us off a bit heavy with the middle card here, the center of the reading being a card of betrayal, deceit, destruction, failure, fighting against overwhelming odds. That's a kind of Helm's Deep situation there. So I'm just going to take this to mean that it really matters who you surround yourself with, because all of the world is against your happiness and your success right now. Jeez. It's depressing, but it's kind of true. I mean, not on an individual basis, but the world is definitely not geared towards your success right now, and to feel somewhat assailed by the circumstances, I'm sure is not uncommon either. And I don't think it's undeserved. It used to be easier to make your dreams come true. I know I'm talking about my own dreams. It used to be easier to make my own dreams come true. The amount of work that gets put into like anything to be successful at it now is really, really intense. I miss that old Jupiter in Sagittarius energy from 2019 for sure. These last couple of years have been really hard, and I do think that we're, fighting against the odds. So I'm taking that Nine of Swords to mean not a failure necessarily, but being assailed from all sides, being surrounded by danger, and it being really, really, really important who we build our community with. So going out from there, we've got the Ace of Wands reversed and the Sun. So you got two very different energies there on opposing sides, because the Ace of Wands reversed is kind of like not being able to move forward or not being able to work, having to figure something out before you can work, maybe solving some problems first. And then the sun is, frolicking, good times, vitality, all good things that you would associate with the sun, basically. But community, I think, here, it's the card that has two people on it as well in one sense or another. They're either working on something together or they're playing together. They're doing something together. Okay. Yeah, this took me a minute. I had to sit here in silence for a minute and cut the video, actually, because this one took so long. But I think what this means is here on the left, it's kind of an inability to work, or it not being about work, right? And here on the right, we've got the sun, which is more of a card of play than it is of work, right? So the energy here is, it's not necessarily about who you can build something with or who you can work with, right? Like to approach it like that we're doing this in co-protection, or we're doing this as some kind of a labor, is the wrong way to look at it. It's the people that bring you joy. Yeah, okay, I like that. Yeah, it's people you want to barbecue with. That's the people you need to surround yourself with. And if you scroll out again from here, you got, basically two reverse cards here that are, fairly negative, I guess, and this one in interpretation, and then this one as a sword. The Four of Swords is a card more of protection, but if it's in reverse, it's not being able to protect potentially, or not being in a particularly protected situation. How about that? So if we make it all about the work of resilience, of making political change happen, of whatever, if we're building the new future and that's all we're worried about, then that's not going to actually give us very much protection, because this is all very swords energy on this side. It's actually through the energy of joy and love and cooperation and co-flourishing that we're successful, and that's through partnership, right? So the Two of Cups, which is about love and partnership and having your cups filled emotionally. So we know who to build community with based on who we love and who we like to spend time with and who we feel like better people around, rather than worrying about the fear and the work that has to be done. You have to like who you're working with, and then you can work forever. You can keep doing what you're doing day in, day out without it being a chore. I like that a lot. That's good. All right, so for a little bit less practical of a question, but more something I'd like to see a little bit more interesting pictures, I'm going to switch over to my Prisma Visions deck. Jeez. These cards have so much color and such great imagery. And there's even some kind of scary imagery in here with the swords. So it gives us something to work with. For this question, what I want to ask is, how do we live adjacent to the military-industrial complex? Not even as its physical, corporeal kind of manifestation that we're used to thinking of it in, but in the sense of the channeled message, where this thing is bigger than one nation. It's bigger than the idea of war. It's like conflict itself. It's this perpetual war thing. And it is an egregore, which has energy that we keep pumping into it and blood that we keep giving it. We're making it very powerful. That's the idea behind the channeled message. So how do we live adjacent to this great beast safely, right? Until its eventual demise. As it said, it was going to have to gorge itself to death. How do we avoid that? How do we not be part of its dinner? So how do we live adjacent to the military-industrial complex as it manifests itself as this new egregore in the world? until its eventual demise. Oh, geez. Okay. I'm seeing a tableau in my head. Here we go. The moon. It's like intuition, inner thoughts, inner spaces. Five of chalices, which is more giving than getting emotionally, and the tower. I think sometimes this is like an investment. It looks like cups that are full of some liquids dropping into the water. So this is an offering of something. It's a giving up of something. And then the tower over here, of course, is always about big, remarkable changes. The 10 of Swords, that is gruesome. He's in the claws of a great beast, all stabbed to death with so many swords. And the 4 of Chalices. This card's been showing up, I think, in every reading each week. 4 of Chalices is kind of, your inner peace, relying on your inner peace there. And the 5 of Chalices right above it, obviously some connectivity there. And the 7 of Swords, man, just assailed on both sides. Picking and choosing your battles. The Hierophant. The 7 of Wands. And the Ace of Swords. It's really hard to fit this whole thing in here. So right in the middle is that card of quiet contemplation, of relying on inner tranquility. So that's probably the answer right there. It's keeping it quiet, chilling out by the riverbank, watching the world go by. Seems like it's a big part of what's going on. That's how we survive. But from the top, the moon, the 5 of Chalices, and the tower are feelings. So the moon can be our feelings. So I think that's what I'm reading from this most is it's an emotionally expensive time. We're preparing for some kind of a big change. Yeah, here we go. We've got our emotions driving what's happening right now for good and for bad, but we're pouring our hearts out into the ocean of everybody else's feelings and emotions as this is building, and you can kind of see this and this are very similar, right? So you have this kind of flow to the tower and water and all these different places. And as the sun is setting on the situation, we get ourselves to the point of change, to the tower card. So there's a lot of emotion flowing into this eventual change. And I think it's probably going to be a message to be aware of that and to be careful how much we invest into it, how wrapped up in that big tide of emotions we get. Because that brings us back to the 4 of Chalices. Like this is just calmly sitting on the riverbank and watching all of that water go by, being surrounded by death and destruction, and having to very carefully pick our battles for everything, right? For the conversations that we can have, for the people that we can bring into our community, for all the problems. Are conflicts worth even having? Is it time to be more selective about those conflicts? Because there are so many to choose from. And it would be easy to get wrapped up and end up, caught up in the violence or something. Just watching the river go by while all the bad stuff happens around us as the center of the reading, with this idea of this emotional outpouring leading into it. And then down here at the bottom, with the Hierophant, the 7 of Wands, and the Ace of Swords, I think the Hierophant is representing a source of mastery, something greater than ourselves, so a belief system. Having a belief system that allows you to, or enables you to navigate the expanse, this period, this interregnum, without falling off here. This guy is jumping from post to post. He's got to be very careful where he puts his feet. If we don't want to end up in the tide that's running towards this great change, if we want to avoid that, got to pick our battles very carefully, got to pick our steps very carefully. And the Ace of Swords, rather than being about violence, I think, because it's stuck into the snow, right? It's point down. I think it's in its intellectual sense. It's It's about clarity of mind. Clarity of mind and making smart choices. And a belief system enables us to do that. The centerpiece again is 4 of chalices. That's us sitting on the riverbank watching the world go by, relying on our inner fortitude, our inner tranquility, while the rest of the world is insane. We don't have to be part of this flow towards the singularity of change here. We can observe it and know it's happening and just watch it happen. We have to pick our steps very carefully, pick our battles very carefully, maintain, above all, clarity of mind. What's our purpose? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Don't get emotional about it. It's all this emotion here driving us towards a big bad change, basically, something significant that's going to happen. Maybe it's not a bad change, but some bad things are going to happen as part of this change. There's definitely some harm that happens here. And it's interesting to me that it's between the moon and the Hierophant, because if the moon is our emotions and the Hierophant is our belief system, with the 10 of Swords between it, that suggests that our emotions and our belief system is what leads us to destruction. So being very cautious about how we approach belief, what's worth putting our energy into, what's worth believing in. That's what the contemplation is for. As we're faced with all of these many conflicts and battles that we have to pick from, it is our belief system and how emotional we allow ourselves to become that will force us into these conflicts that will destroy us. And then down this way, in the middle, we have this emotional energy that we're pouring into it. We have the relying on our inner calm and inner stability, sitting on the riverbank energy, and then crossing that river. So it's like we're going to be pouring ourselves into it. Everyone's going to be pouring energy into something, but as we sit in the riverbank and watch, we can be smart. We can find the right way, the right thing to put our energy into, the right, I think, physical place to be, how to navigate very cautiously through this tumultuous world, right? But following our passions and our joys is still in there. We have to be very smart about it. So there's this balance between spending lots of time thinking about it and getting that mental clarity so that we know where to put our passions and our emotions, and we can make it worth the risk of jumping across this expanse, which is getting through this period where everyone in the world is in danger because of this egregore of violence. And then on the final side, we've got the Tower over the 7 of Swords and the Ace of Swords. In this time of change, we have to pick our battles. We have to be fully focused on the one thing that's worth fighting for. Look and read the diagonals here with the moon, the 4 of chalices, and the Ace of Swords. This is our emotions, this is us being contemplative, and this is us picking and choosing the right thing. So again, I think it's just a reflection of spending the time to understand how we feel and why we feel the way that we do, and trying to find our inner peace rather than just react to stimuli that's around us. Gives us that mental clarity and allows us to not just conquer our emotions, but to put them to some kind of good use. And then kind of the same with the Hierophant and the Tower here, that time to contemplate our beliefs as we go into this period of change is what affords us the distance and the perspective to make good choices. So it seems like this is quite of an indirect answer, but we avoid, when we say, like, how do we live safely adjacent to the military-industrial complex, it's a global issue. Like, war goes on everywhere. We have no idea who's going to shoot at who, or who's going to shoot rockets at who, or how any of this is going to shake out. Or, as so many people have been fearing recently, with porous borders and people who don't come from a place living in greater and greater numbers in that place and providing cover for potential terrorists or whatever you might think of them coming into this country or to European countries. Like, it's probably not an immediately legitimate fear exactly, but it's something that I think in the world that we're in today can't be ignored. And so people are fearful about it, and I've been hearing a lot of people talking about that fear. And that fear doesn't do anything for anyone, because all it's going to do is stoke tension and create more demand for violence and more opportunity to have things to be afraid of. So we have to pick our battles. We don't approach this combatively. We approach this very calmly from a place of inner peace. So living next to the military industrial complex, it seems like, and this makes sense, I guess, that this egregore feeds on all of this passionate, angry, hostile, fearful emotion, driving us to cataclysm. And it's through contemplation, picking our battles, being very careful where we put our energy, having a belief system that is strong enough to withstand the assault from the propaganda machine and the fear porn that's everywhere around us, and everyone around us who has fallen for it or who is susceptible to it, and their energy driving the people around them into this place of fervor and fear. Tranquility, inner peace. That's how we live next to it, by not stirring the pot, by not falling for it, by not getting worked up and allowing it to be violent, feeding into the violence. We sit in the middle of it. We're very careful with how we spend our time, very careful about how we choose to move forward and where to put our energy. All right, that's good. That makes sense. Choose very carefully your battles and choose very carefully where you put your feet as we move down this decidedly more dangerous path ahead. But do so without fear, because fear will just end up creating more opportunity for violence, opportunity for self-destruction. Spend more time sitting on the riverbank and watching the world go by. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.